wrestling fans, are you ready? For the untold numbers listening at home, at work, in their cars, at the gym, and anywhere else people listen to podcasts, from Keene in the Shire, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get hyped for the Penguin Club Podcast!
Oh, we're just getting started, baby. Because I stay hyped!
This is the Penguin Club Podcast. It's that podcast that's just too sweet to miss. And I am your host, Daryl W. Perry, the Killer Penguin. That's right. On this show, I'm the Hill, baby. I am the Hill. And what we're going to do, so let me start off by... Actually, this is something very, very special in a way. The show is going to be dedicated to none other than Bobby the Brain Heenan, who passed away earlier this week. And I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, he was that guy that you just loved to hate. If that makes any sense. Now, I grew up largely in the 80s. So I remember the Hogan versus Andre thing and who was in Andre's corner, but none other than the Weasel, Bobby the Brain Heenan. And then there was the thing several years later where he actually wound up, even though he had not wrestled in many years, he was managing. He wound up being in that match against the British Bulldogs, and he wore that dog attack suit, and it was just so cheesy. But at the same time, you look back on it with just fond memories. And I mean this sincerely. My heart does go out to his family and his loved ones. And again, this episode dedicated to Bobby the Brain Heenan. Now, before I get into previewing and giving my predictions for No Mercy, since this is the first episode of the Penguin Club Podcast, I want to make sure that I let you know what the plan is for the show. So, what I'm planning to do is basically do previews for all of the pay-per-views. And, well, even though right now Starrcade, and yeah, I know it sounds so weird, because again, growing up in the 80s, Starrcade was that pay-per-view that sort of went head-to-head, not directly head-to-head necessarily, but, you know, it was WCW/NWA's answer of sorts to the WWF at the time, WrestleMania. And yeah, so Starrcade is back. Still not sure how exactly WWE is going to present this. Will it be a network exclusive, meaning available only on the WWE network? Will it be considered a pay-per-view along the lines of Hell in a Cell, No Mercy, TLC, Survivor Series, Clash of Champions? Another thing that sort of, you know, like WWE is basically just sort of throwing it in the face of, yeah, we can use all the names of pay-per-views that WCW used back in the 90s. I'm just waiting on them to wind up coming up with Sold Out. Maybe once the Ring of Honor guys that just signed with NXT, once they come up, they'll form some kind of invasion faction with the former Bullet Club members. Finn Balor, yeah, Finn Balor used to be in the Bullet Club. He was OG Bullet Club. AJ Styles, obviously, that's highlighted a lot that AJ Styles and Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows were all in the club together. So maybe there's going to be some kind of, I hope they don't try reviving NWO, but maybe they'll do their own sort of thing and have a sold-out pay-per-view. I don't know. I really, really don't know. But again, the reason that I mention the pay-per-views and Starrcade is my plans right now. are to do prediction shows for the pay-per-views, and I do have a Patreon. And actually, if you go to the website, penguinclubpod.com, that will take you to the Patreon, and you'll see what the perks are. You'll see what the goals are. So the initial goal, $100 per episode, I will then review the pay-per-view. So right now I'm giving predictions, doing a preview. At $100, I will do a review of the episode or of the pay-per-views. At $250, I'll do a monthly podcast based around various patron-only polls. So I'll put up polls, fantasy booking, old pay-per-view reviews, various things, like how would you like to see this done? Hey, Daryl, we're going to make you watch this really horrible pay-per-view from back in the 80s and give us your thoughts. Various things of that sort. And again, certain patrons will be able to vote on those polls once they're, sort of achievement unlocked. So once I hit that $250 per episode threshold, then I'll start putting up polls. I'm not going to put up polls before reaching that threshold. So let's jump into the review, or rather the preview, and the predictions for No Mercy. And before I do, also, I got an email from WWE a couple days ago. And if you have the network, you probably wound up getting the email as well, where it was for a survey of various things. And one of the questions was, would you like to see more content from other promotions? 2 promotions specifically were mentioned: Ring of Honor and New Japan Pro Wrestling. Currently, I subscribe to NJP World. I subscribe to New Japan's streaming service. Unfortunately, ROH does not have their own thing, but you can wind up watching a lot of ROH content for free on the FITE app. That's FITE. So if you want to get, I think it's $20 free credit by using fight.penguinclubpod.com. And they've actually got a pay-per-view coming up tonight where Minoru Suzuki is facing Cody, don't call him Rhodes, the American Nightmare, Cody, who's the ROH World Champion. Those 2 men are squaring off. And if you watched any of the G1, then you would see what Minoru Suzuki did to Okada. And if you watched, that was from G1 Climax. If you watched the G1 special from Long Beach, you saw Cody go not quite the distance, but went a long way with Okada, wound up losing to Okada. Suzuki took Okada to a draw. Those 2 men getting in the ring tonight, and it's one that I wish I was able to watch tonight. Definitely going to try watching that at some time. But again, fight.penguinclubpod.com is where you can actually go and watch a lot of ROH content. Now, again, I'm not necessarily going to review or preview the ROH stuff, but maybe that's something that happens at that $250 per episode mark where unlock more content. So let's jump into the No Mercy, and I'm going to give you my predictions, not things that, I've read the wrestling dirt sheets, because, I don't read the wrestling dirt sheets. I do listen to some wrestling podcasts where I hear them talk about the wrestling dirt sheets, but, you can get that sort of thing anywhere. I just want to share my perspective and bring a slightly different twist. So, starting off, and I don't know the order of the card, nobody really does. So going to start off with that one-on-one contest that's kind of been, hyped up a good bit recently, featuring John Cena and Roman Reigns. Now, I will mention briefly, it has been rumored and speculated that John Cena is going to be leaving for a while. So a lot of people say that automatically means that Reigns is going to win. Well, I don't necessarily know because, maybe Cena wants to go out on a high note. And this match really, because Cena's been around for a long time. He's got a lot of sway, so he can determine who he puts over and who he doesn't. And he verbally was not putting over Roman Reigns at all in the weeks leading up. But I do wind up, I think that Reigns is going to wind up winning, not just because of speculations of, well, they're trying to push Reigns versus fill in the blank for the world title at WrestleMania. But at this point, I'm sort of split. So, on the one hand, I definitely think that, Cena probably, if it was a legit match, Cena would win. But I do think that with the stories that they're going with, I do think that Reigns will wind up picking up the victory. Next match, Finn Balor versus Bray Wyatt. This is, again, we've seen this match several times. I wasn't excited about it the first time. I wasn't excited about it the second time. And I'm not excited about it this time. Hopefully, Finn Balor winds up beating Bray Wyatt, and then hopefully Finn Balor moves into contention for some title, something. Give it, find him a tag team partner, and please, WWE, please do not do with Finn Balor and Bray Wyatt what you did with Sheamus and Cesaro. I know it worked out for them. I know it's worked out for the Bar. But please don't do it with Balor and Wyatt. Nobody wants to see Balor-Bray become a tag team. Bray-Balor. We don't want to see that. So please let Finn Balor move on to a different feud and wind up giving us something good with Goldust. Maybe, just maybe. And now I know a lot of people have said, well, that Goldust thing where he was supposed to have a protege, that just sort of got dropped. Well, maybe it didn't get dropped. Maybe it's still working somehow. Maybe Bray Wyatt is actually going to be the protege of Goldust. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know any secret info here. I'm just speculating, giving you my thoughts. But again, hopefully Finn Balor wins, and that's actually my prediction. So again, official prediction on first match is Reigns. Second match is Balor. And now we get into the title matches. Raw Tag Team titles. Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins, 2/3 of the Shield, back together as champions against The Bar. And as much as I like Dean Ambrose and as much as I can tolerate Seth Rollins when he's in that position with Dean Ambrose, I don't know how long this team is actually going to wind up working out. And WWE's been doing this sort of, toss the titles back and forth, hot potatoes sort of thing. And I definitely want Dean and Seth to win, but I'm predicting The Bar. I just am. Another title that's sort of been hot-shotted back and forth was the Cruiserweight title, even though, yes, I know Neville held it for a really long time. And then he lost it. And then he won it back 6 days later. Yay. So it's like nothing ever changed. Only now he's on his second reign, so he can say he's a 2-time champion. And then Enzo Amore, the certified G bona fide stud, can't teach that, who is just becoming super, super annoying, wound up being demoted to 205 Live and the Cruiserweight division. He gets a title shot because why not? I want Neville to win. I really like Neville's style because Neville is, when you think of cruiserweights, or at least when I do, and I think, you're doing a bunch of flippy stuff and high flyer and athletic, Neville has it. He has it. Now, when I say it, like some people, are you comparing him with Bobby Roode, who has the it factor? No, I'm not comparing Neville to Bobby Roode. Multiple people can have it without being compared to Bobby Roode. But speaking of Bobby Roode, where the hell is he on this card? Hopefully, they wind up adding some kind of pre-show match that involves Bobby Roode, even though Bobby Roode deserves to be on the main card because he's just that good. Oh, wait. I know why Bobby Roode's not on here, because this is... Yeah, this is a a Raw pay-per-view. Bobby's on SmackDown. That's why Bobby's not on here. But again, hopefully whatever the next pay-per-view, next SmackDown is Hell in a Cell, hopefully Bobby has a match on that. But where's he been? Where has Bobby Roode been? And I heard some people speculate, and yes, I know I'm diverting here, but that's what happens. And this is one reason that I'm not a huge fan of the brand split thing, is because there's some people that you just wind up forget. Oh, right, they're on the other show, and then you don't see them on the show, and then you're like, where are they? I thought they were supposed to be on the show, but they're not on the show. But with sort of the depth of talent, they kind of do need the different shows to highlight people. But if you're not highlighting all of your people, then what difference does it make? But again, talking about the cruiserweight match here, I hope Neville retains. I do not want to see Enzo with the belt. The Raw Women's title match. Now a fatal 5-way because Bayley came back. I have such a huge crush on Bayley. She's just like so cute and bubbly and huggy, and the wacky wavy inflatable arm flailing two men. And yes, I know I'm supposed to be a heel, but she's just so darling, right? So she got added to the match, returning after, what was it, like a shoulder injury, suffered at the hands of Nia Jax, who also in the match. So the match is champion Alexa Bliss versus Bayley versus the legit boss Sasha Banks versus Nia Jax versus Emma. There's speculation, and I'm going to talk about a little bit of speculation here. Speculation that WWE might put the belt on Nia just because Asuka is coming up. And Asuka, remember, Asuka has not been beaten since joining WWE. Yeah, I know she's not been up on the main roster yet, but she held that women's title in NXT for, what was it, 520-something days? Officially, I know from the time that she actually took it until she dropped it, it was 504. But then, that was at a TV taping that aired 3 weeks later, so I think it was somewhere like 523, 524, something like that. She's still not been pinned. She's still not been submitted in a singles match. Now, there were early on when she joined NXT, there were like a couple battle royals where she got tossed over a rope. I think there was a tag team match where her team lost, but she didn't take the pinfall. But we do know that Asuka is coming to Raw. And who would not love to see Asuka versus Nia Jax for that women's title? As such, I am going to wind up saying Nia Jax against all odds, because she's not like most girls. And everybody's going to try teaming up on her to take her out of the match. But I do think that Nia Jax will wind up winning. I'm going to also predict that Emma takes the pinfall. Yeah, that's right. I'm predicting that Emma takes the pinfall. So I'm not only picking the winner, but also who takes the pinfall. And I think they're going to do this for a couple of reasons. Emma hasn't really gotten much of a push since, the whole character change that wasn't a character change that kind of was a character change. But also you want your champion to look strong in defeat. And in a 5-way match, you can have your champion lose the belt without losing, without taking the pinfall, without being submitted. And then that also will wind up helping Alexa have a stronger case where, hey, I never actually got beat for that belt. And yeah, I know there's the automatic rematch clause that WWE has that sometimes they forget about, but it definitely builds up Alexa's case, especially if Nia's first defense is against Asuka. That would be absolutely... So you bring Asuka up, and you have her just straight away challenge Nia for the title. Asuka kicks Nia's head off. And then Alexa, who has been for several weeks begging for, I want a rematch, I never got beat, then starts running away from the rematch because it's not a match against Nia, it's a match against Asuka. And I realize I'm getting into some fantasy booking here, which I might wind up doing that, but it's not a guarantee that I will wind up fantasy booking anything when I do these preview shows. But again, I just, bear with me here because I definitely want to sort of, fantasy book this particular match. So if I were WWE creative, here's how I'd book it. So you have Emma, Sasha, Bayley, and Bliss sort of, like 4-way team Nia. Try to take Nia out. And you have Nia, knocked out, not knocked out, unconscious, knocked out. We're not talking Kevin Owens headbutt Vince McMahon sort of thing. But you take Nia sort of out of the equation. So she's outside of the ring. And then, the 4 smaller women go at it. And at some point, like Sasha and Bayley are teaming up against Alexa. And they already have sort of Emma out of the picture as well. And they're, having that friendly one-upsman of, well, I can do this move on Alexa. I can do this move on Alexa. Or maybe they do this to Emma. Doesn't really matter. But then at some point, Nia just sort of comes in and steals the victory by just like roll up Emma, get the 1, 2, 3. Bliss looks strong because she wasn't involved in the decision. She's getting double teamed, even though Bayley and Sasha are both faces and Alexa's the heel. But, it builds an interesting dynamic there. And then Alexa starts, just very loudly demanding a rematch. Couple of weeks, you bring Asuka in. Still haven't given Alexa her rematch. Don't give her the rematch right away. Say, Alexa, you will get your rematch at the next pay-per-view, which the next Raw pay-per-view is TLC. So that's the end of October. Or maybe they wind up holding off and say, Alexa, you get your rematch at Survivor Series. And you have Asuka come in at TLC. Or you could bring Asuka in, so it doesn't really matter which pay-per-view they do it at. But still, you just tell Alexa that her rematch is at one of these upcoming pay-per-views. You bring Asuka in straight away. Asuka, you were undefeated in NXT. You had to surrender your title, so we are going to reward you with a title match against Nia Jax. And then Asuka beats Nia Jax, and then Alexa stops demanding her rematch. She stops even talking about the rematch because Alexa Bliss fears Asuka because nobody can take down Asuka. And maybe they'll save some kind of something for Survivor Series to where Asuka winds up, being taken down by like 5 people. I hope they don't do that. I hope they let Asuka just sort of, run through the Raw women's roster for several months until maybe WrestleMania at the earliest. But definitely Asuka is on such a different level. They just need to let her do her thing. So that's sort of my fantasy booking of the Raw women's division. Now let's go to the Intercontinental Championship match with Jason Angle. Yeah, I'm going to call him Jason. He's supposedly Kurt Angle's son, right? So I'm going to call him Jason Angle versus The Miz for the Intercontinental title. Now, on the one hand, Jason Jordan is at a severe disadvantage here because not only is Jordan the challenger, meaning that he has to pick up the pinfall or make Miz tap out to a submission, but also The Miz is going to have the Miztourage in his corner. I definitely think that for storyline here, you do need Jason to wind up picking it up. Jason Angle pick up the victory because even though The Miz has done amazing things with the IC title, I prefer it when he's chasing that belt from a storyline perspective. He is so much better when he's chasing that belt. So I would have Jason Jordan win. And that's actually my prediction is Jason Jordan. I think they're going to have him win. If he doesn't, it's going to be through not a clean victory on the part of The Miz. This brings us to the Beast versus the Monster. Brock Lesnar versus Braun. Brock and Braun going Beast versus Monster for the Universal title. And I know there's speculation that Brock is going to wind up holding this thing all the way until WrestleMania, where he then goes one-on-one against Roman. But, we've seen that match before. We've seen Roman versus Braun before. And to some extent, we've seen Brock versus Braun, even though never one-on-one. I'm definitely looking forward to this one-on-one Brock versus Braun match. I hope there's no interference. I really, really hope there's no interference here. And I hope that it's not some kind of a squash match. I know they're both big guys. Neither one really goes very long in a match, and it's going to be difficult for a monster to squash a beast, and it's going to be difficult for a beast to squash a monster. But I'm hoping for somewhere at least a 10-minute match, if not longer. I know, again, it's difficult for the big guys to do those really long matches. But my prediction, despite everything that I've read online, despite everything that I've heard in podcasts of how, Brock is supposed to hold the belt all the way through to at least WrestleMania, and then who knows what is going to happen. I really, really want Braun to get his hands on that title. And then here's how you book this. So you have Braun pick up the belt at No Mercy, give them the rematch at TLC, and you make the two big guys fight in a TLC match. Or at least, maybe they'll give them a tables match. I don't know. I think they might be booking it towards a tables match. But my prediction, Braun Strowman takes home the Universal title at No Mercy. Hey, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, share it around, and consider becoming one of the patrons and get your merch. Merch.penguinclubpod.com. I'll be back in 2 weeks to give that preview of Hell in a Cell.